The more negative thinking we have, the more those neural connections get strengthened. We all have them because it's a way how the brain protects itself. The question is, how long do they linger? How much do we let our life influence them? And how quickly can we transform out of them into a more positive thinking? Hello and welcome. We're going to talk about how to deal with negative thoughts today, because they can happen to all of us. Even if you're a more generally positive thinker, things can happen and it can spiral and they can persist. They can be really draining and they really make you feel stuck. And the problem is, if you're staying in a fixed mindset, it's going to just spiral down more and it has an impact on your brain. And we're going to talk about today how you can transform a negative thought into something positive. And here, big disclaimer right up front, it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
It's not easy at all. So stick around because we're going to share a couple strategies on how to do it, but and how it impacts your brain in particular as well. So welcome. I'm Heike Fallon. I'm a personal high performance coach, and I help my clients master the self-leadership, and negative thoughts are definitely a big component of that in order to show up as better leaders for others and people around them.
Yeah. Hello, I am Shannon Passalacqua, and I too am a personal high performance coach. And I specialize in helping women heal after miscarriages. And let me tell you, there's a lot of negative thinking when you're going through a miscarriage, and a lot of waiting, and a lot of time to experience those negative thoughts. So we will talk about how to get through all that.
Oh, I love that already off the bat, because the problem is when there's time, that can
Yeah.
make things so much worse. But first, let's talk quick a little bit about, I think it's always good to know a little bit the science component of how our brain functions, because when we know that, I think it's sometimes easier to apply some of the strategies. And so one big component, the way the brain functions, is trying to predict what's going to happen. And oftentimes, when there's uncertainty or there's a curveball, a traumatic thing happens, a big life change happens, and it's hard for the brain to predict what's going to happen because there's so many variables, it's super easy that the brain will respond with negative thinking, because it might also, which it does, check back with history, patterns that may have happened in the past, things that happened to us in the past, and we may not be aware of them. They might be subconscious, still sticking in there of something that happened similar, like whatever event is going on. And it doesn't, when it's trying to predict, it might refer to a negative experience in the past, and that creates even a stronger negative thought for what the current situation is. So also, the more negative thinking we have, the more those neural connections get strengthened. So the more negative thought, the better we get at it. We're getting really good at negative thinking. And that's why it's so important to work on positive thoughts. And that doesn't mean like, oh, just talking something nicely, and if you don't believe it, it's not going to work. But the more we shift to a positive thought pattern, we strengthen that connection, and we can get really good at more positive thinking and shift that around. Now, again, one big last thing on the brain perspective is those negative thoughts help us to protect us. So they're good. It's not like they should never be there. We all, like I said, we all have them because it's a way how the brain protects itself. But the question is, how long do they linger? How much do we let our life influence them? And how quickly can we transform out of them into a more positive thinking? So there you go. I covered that.
Yeah, no, and I think you did a good job covering it. I tend to call it spiraling, because the science behind it is you're deepening those grooves in your brain to continue to think negatively, and that's just going to keep happening and happening. You're gonna that's a nonstop thing. When I'm talking about it with my clients, I call it spiraling, because you can have the negative thoughts, but it's very easy to keep going down, 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 down. And, you think you're doing the research, or you think you're, you know, just kind of taking time to yourself, and it can get really out of control, and it can get really bad. And I think there is a time or a place to say, okay, I'm going to let myself feel my feelings. I don't want to ignore the
Mm-hmm.
feelings that I'm having. I'm not going to ignore all this. And I'm going to give myself this amount of time to do it. And I'm going to be okay with those emotions. And now I have the tools, and I know what to do to get myself out of that. And I think that is really important, is knowing the tools that work, and knowing the tools that work specifically for you. So that's why it's really important that we work on this before something bad happens. But if we are in the middle of something, and if we haven't prepared, we're going to help you, develop some tools that will kind of help you get out of that headspace and move you forward and get you in motion.
Yeah, actually love it, because that self-awareness of the emotions is what we often lack. We don't even realize how we're really feeling about something until it's really, really bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
And
that's the first step, is
yeah,
self-awareness and
yes,
awareness of what you're thinking. I think they
yes.
call that metacognitive. I don't.
Yeah, so
Wait.
it's really recognizing and being aware of your emotions, your feelings, and secondly, your thoughts. Because you may
Mhm.
not even realize that you're having a negative thought, because sometimes they can be very settled, just with
Yeah.
a little it can be like more with a fixed mindset, kind of like it could be kind of like, oh, why did I do this stupid mistake?
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
It's not a
Yeah.
big deal, right? But when I'm
Or I'm so dumb. Only like, oh, I'm the only person who would do that. Or
yeah, yeah. So those are already negative thoughts about ourselves. Now, we might not catch ourselves on that sometimes because they're not too life impacting in the moment.
Mhm.
Versus when something like you really worry about something where you go, I don't know how next week is going to look like. And you start really going deeper into what if. And I think
Mhm.
that's when like you call it the spiraling, I call it like the when you get into the what if domino effect. Because
Yeah.
with what if this happens, what if that happens, what if, and then you might end up so deep down in the ifs where you have to stop and go like, is that really going to be, I mean, what are the likelihood that really going to happen? And it might
Right.
only be 10%,
Yeah.
right? To then scale back to go, okay, which thoughts are really relevant, where I have to kind of look at, okay, this is what's going on. How can I solve that? What are my
Mhm.
actions to do this? And look more forward of the real possibilities, and how am I gonna create the next step to moving forward, instead of, oh, if this happens and this happens and that what this happens, and then you're going backwards into the spiral.
Well, I think when you do that, you tend to go to the worst case scenario. And
Uh-huh.
usually, worst case scenario is not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, when I was going through my miscarriages, worst case scenario was I was never going to be able to get pregnant again, and we would only have, our one son together. And that was worst case scenario. Um, and that obviously isn't what happened. We ended up having, another child, but there's a lot that goes into that time period of waiting, and there's only like you can control what you can control.
Yep.
And so take note of the things that you can control and work on that.
Yep. Which I love that strategy personally for myself. Like you said, you got to try out different strategies that
Mm-hmm.
work for you, like to take a look at what can I control, what can I not control, seem to definitely one of the strategies I go to more often. And for me also, definitely another strategy is a simple question to myself is that really true? Because if I tend to, like in the moment, things aren't going well, and is that really true that it's that bad?
Right.
Then in kind of like, okay, get over it. It's really not that bad in the moment. I can, I know it's a tough situation, and then shifting to like, what can I do? From there. And I know it's hard sometimes, but I think also in general, our general mindset plays a huge role. So if we're going generally in with a fixed mindset, it's much harder to shift out of negative thoughts. Versus if we look at it more with a growth mindset, when things happen, there's always something that is somewhat positive about the situation that might not be super beneficial to deal with it right now, but in the long run, it might be a good thing. And that can be, so many different things that seem very desperate and tragic at the moment, but it also can be something good about it, or there's something that we can move forward, because there is usually something slightly
You can take from
positive
it.
that you can take from it and then build on that.
Yeah. I think if you look up, the steps to take to get out of a negative mindset, some of the things that aren't mentioned that I believe is one of what some of the most important things that you can do for yourself is to go outside, take a walk, get some sunshine. And that is one of the hardest steps you can take, because when you are ruminating, when you're spiraling, when you're in the middle of grief or a negative spiral, the last thing you want to do is get up
and move.
and move. What you want to do is stay cocooned.
Pull the blanket.
Yep. Scroll.
Yep.
Find any other negative thing that's on the internet. Watch TV, whatever. But what you really need to do, and what I would suggest is, hey, get up, go outside, and just say to yourself, I'm just gonna walk around the block. It'll be a 5-minute thing, and that's it. And usually once you get moving, you might go longer. Usually you tend to, okay, this feels good, I'm going to keep going. But it helps your brain process that information. It's the fight or flight. It gets you out of that moment. It gets you out of the negative thinking, and it moves you forward. And so if you're in one of those negative spirals, if you're feeling something negative or you're having negative thoughts, that is the first step I would take.
Yep. Move.
Move.
Move is movement is the best medicine, as we always say. But
yeah,
also I love that you said that, because it's off, obviously the brain doesn't want to spend more energy. It's already exhausted and drained from all the negative thinking. So then now we distract ourselves by watching TV, sitting on the sofa scrolling, which give us a little dopamine release because of the
yeah.
things we're seeing, but we're distracting also from really checking in how we're feeling in order to really think through of how to move forward. And that's when, like, I love it when we actually change our physical state, we also change our mental state. Meaning, if we start moving, you go outside instead of sitting in the same room, going outside, going to a different place. Again, nature is a good place to go. Lots of research for that. But once we move, once we change in the environment we're in, it will also change and help and make thinking differently more easy.
I would also say, if you're not willing to do it for yourself, take yourself out of the equation and say, okay, who needs my support right now? Who do I need to be a good role model for? And this sucks right now. Whatever, the negativity sucks, but who can I role model for? Is it for my partner? Is it for my children? It's like, who am I showing up for?
Yep.
Coworker, and do it to be a good role model. If doing it for yourself isn't enough,
Yep.
do it to be a good role model and see what happens. Because I think at that point, things will start changing in your mind.
Yeah. And I think too, I want to just quick mention that if somebody's really, really struggling and can absolutely not move, and the negative thinking is really so persistent and it's really more in a form of depression, please seek help. Please reach
Definitely.
out to a therapist to get the appropriate help you may need. Oftentimes, it just kickstarts you to what you need and create a momentum that gets you out of what the state what you're in right now. So please seek out help. It's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. It just helps you to actually move forward and get that first little step, which is the hardest usually.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it, but I have to mention it. Gratitude practice is
I
really,
was gonna say journaling.
journaling is good. Yes, journaling is good too. Journaling might help, but I found when negative thoughts come out to me, I'm like, journaling seems really hard for me. I just
Yeah.
it seems to be for me. It might be different for others, but for me, if I'm more in the negative thought pattern, then journaling turns into, I don't
More
know,
rage.
more rage and negativity, but it might help for somebody. So journaling is always a good one, but
It might help get it out of you.
get it out. So yeah, so it really depends on, like we said, try out different strategies, see which one worked for you. But gratitude practice, it does release different chemicals in your brain that can be really beneficial to shift the negative thoughts to positive thought, to really um, really connect to what you truly grateful, thankful for in the moment. Again, for gratefulness, and you might want to check out some of other videos. You do want to take a moment, not just the general like, oh, I'm grateful for my family or something. When there's negative thoughts, you really want to connect a little more on specific ones. What are you grateful for about your family? Is it a specific family member? What are you grateful for with what they give you maybe, or why are you grateful for them? And really connected to your emotions. So it really has a deeper meaning for you and comes really to your conscious awareness. And that can, again, release different chemicals that are beneficial and shift you more into the positive thought patterns. So
And
practicing
usually
gratitude. Yeah, go ahead.
when you start thinking of something, let's just say you're just trying to find one thing to be grateful for, usually that'll start a spiral where you end up finding more things to be grateful for. So instead of doing the doom spiral,
Yeah, you do the up spiral. What does
yeah,
that
let's
one
try
called?
doing the gratitude spiral.
We need to have a better word for it. Does anybody have a good word for it? It's
I don't know what it means, but
the
it's a
sky spiral.
yeah. I mean, I think once you start focusing on things that are positive, which is hard when you're in the moment,
Yep.
but just try to find one thing.
Yeah.
And then after that, see if you can get to three. And usually that's you can do that, even if it's something small.
Yep.
Hey, I'm really grateful for my dog coming up and snuggling with me. Whatever.
Yep. It could be simple. It's the same. The brain doesn't make a difference. What kind of what you're grateful for, it gives you the same chemical release,
Release.
usually dopamine and serotonin. So it doesn't make a difference if it's something super big or something small.
Yeah.
It
I would
really
also try to remember this is temporary.
love that.
The negative thoughts, it's temporary. It's not forever. I think you and I both struggle with hormone issues.
But better be temporarily.
I do. I have to
Well,
keep
but it
reminding
feels it
myself.
feels in the moment, it feels like this is
It's
it.
like it's forever.
This is all, and it feels
It's
forever.
it's all consuming.
Yes. And it absolutely it's gonna get better. It's gonna
Yeah.
get better. But
The feelings are temporary, the emotions are temporary, the thoughts are temporary, the state of, you know, our lives right now are temporary. Everything is, everything's going to change.
yeah. And that puts me to another strategy here. Can be hard, but I'm still going to mention it. Visualizing your success, visualizing you getting through this, even though it's hard right now, knowing that this will be temporary, and to go, okay, but in 6 months from now, I know I've gone through this, I've mastered the challenges, I made these shifts, and my life will look this way. Because when we're visualizing the success and the positive state, again, that's chemical releases. And the brain, when you talk to yourself visually, and I'm going to talk in a second about another strategy, it believes yourself the most. And if you start and all this negative stuff comes up and it's too hard, well, start other strategies first. Do the gratitude first. Do other things first before you start visualizing. But it can be a really, really powerful tool, and it's backed by research. So visualizing has a huge impact on the brain as well. The other thing, positive talk. That's what I meant to say too. Like positive talk when it's authentic, not just
Yes.
not
Don't do this fake.
now the fake one and just running around, just, I'm great, I'm fine, whatever, and you're not believing it, it's not going to do it. But if you really focus on the things that you love about yourself, or even if it's things like, hey, I managed a similar challenge before, I can do this, and it and you feel it and it's authentic, it can be powerful. Another way, a good strategy, is to do tapping, EFT. So you can Google it. There's lots of apps for tapping. What it essentially is, you tap different spots on your face and body, a hand usually as well. It depends on the different styles, and you comp that, you tap while you actually repeating certain phrases. So the apps actually have different scripts that you can follow along, and that can be really powerful too. So if you struggle yourself figuring out what to say to yourself, sometimes using these apps or a guided version of this can also be super helpful.
Yeah. And the one last thing that I'll say, and it's one of the easiest things that you can use all the time, wherever you are, is breathing.
Yeah,
and
would have been my next one.
this is, and it's something that I do when I'm in doctor's offices. Every time I go back to the doctor's office, if I go to OBGYN, it kind of, my anxiety gets high. And I know people who are going through miscarriages, every time that they have to go get their blood drawn or they have to wait in the waiting room, it can be very difficult. A lot of negative thoughts come during that time. So I would highly suggest, and it's very easy, is just a simple breathing method. And you can look them up. There's so many different types. The one that I personally like is breathe in through the nose for 4 seconds and breathe out through the mouth for 6 seconds. And when your exhale is longer than your inhale, it helps calm your body. There's also box breathing, right? And that's breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. And all of these things will help
Hold for 4
calm.
again, and hold for 4.
Oh, hold for another 4. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a box.
So that is a very easy technique you can use. There are, when I talk to my clients about this, we talk a lot about like, all right, if you're at a holiday party or something and you're in the middle of going through a miscarriage, or people are talking about like, oh, when are you gonna have a baby or whatever, I say, I'm like,
just breathe.
You can just excuse yourself, go to the bathroom and breathe.
Yep.
No one needs to know you're doing it. No one needs to know what's going on. You just go into the bathroom and take 2 minutes to yourself, close your eyes, don't do this while you're driving, and just breathe.
And it's the same anytime a negative thought comes up, to just kind of stop for a second when you catch it and just do a good breathing exercise. So I teach once a month a 30-minute Zoom call, free. And it rotates in different topics. So, but there's always in some capacity, some kind of breathing or relaxation exercise that I teach. And those can be done anywhere, anytime. You don't need any tools. And most of the time,
True.
you do like 3 to 6 cycles of the breath, like that's a minute max,
Yeah.
you can already, I mean, sometimes depends on the situation, a little longer might be good, but you can shift your state of, as far as the ramped up fight and flight, when you're thinking negative and you're in the fight and flight mode, you can calm your nervous system down really quickly. 6 good breath, like the ones you said, with longer exhalation, for example. 6 breath, and you can do a lot when you practice that. Or
Yeah.
box breathing, whatever one works for you. You have to figure out which one works for you, because not everybody necessarily, responds well to the box breathing. Not everybody
I have
does.
a hard time with that one.
Yeah, but for some people it's good and some people's not. So there is, like, again, with all of these strategies and with all of the things, it's always, you have to try them out and see which one works for you. And try them out more than once. Trying out once usually
Well,
doesn't do it. You might want to, give it a couple times a shot. But if you have one that you find that works well for you, stick to that one, and then possibly expand again some later time on that. One last thing, since I think it's my last one, unless you have another one there, but
I don't.
I call myself a recovered perfectionist.
Oh, I have never been that.
Yeah. So if you're out there a perfectionist, like I definitely used to be a big perfectionist, and it's such a trap for negative thoughts. Because they if it's just not the way we envision it and we want it,
Yeah.
it comes really quickly on. And to learn and shift and to embrace that it doesn't have to be perfect, and things will work out even if they kind of look a little rough around the edges, or things are going a little bit this way instead of kind of streamlined. Because I like to plan, I like to know what's happening. It's not always possible to embrace that, and really let go of that perfectionism can cut down a lot of negative thoughts that would show up normally once you have that under control. So I like that as a long-term strategy to avoid,
Yeah.
besides the growth mindset, right? But and perfectionism is a fixed mindset by all means. So
Yeah.
we're never all in the fixed or the growth mindset. We're always on a continuum. We're, in certain ways, we might be in a fixed mindset, which is a negative thought, but we can shift, and into a growth mindset. And it might be in different areas. So we're never one or the other. In different areas, we may, it's a combination of things. So,
Yeah.
but overcoming that perfectionism and embracing it, that definitely helps for
Yeah.
sure. So,
Awesome. That's
well,
good.
fantastic. Well, happy day, happy thoughts. Watch some of our other videos. You find, I definitely highly recommend to watch, like the gratitude one.
Yeah.
How to really do that well. And there's so many other ones we have. Check out the channel. There's lots that help to overcome negative thoughts, because it's not a one and done. It's a little journey, and to learn how to think and shift out of negative thoughts faster and quicker. But it definitely helps your health and your
Yeah.
well-being, and definitely in the long run also for your longevity. So with that said, happy thoughts.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Okay.